Those Space People, a podcast series of casual cosmic conversations with people working on exciting space projects.
Today we have Omkar Nikam with us. He is the founder of Access Hub, a space technology, defense, and security research and analysis firm with a global coverage and a special emphasis on Europe. Omkar is also a freelance consultant, an analyst, and he writes extensively around space applications for defense and also international security. Do check out his podcast, the Space, Defense, and Security Podcast. Link will be in the description. And he is currently based in Strasbourg, France. And Omkar is one of the people in the space industry who is testament to the fact that there's no limit to one's imagination in carving out a niche for oneself. And I'm super excited about this conversation. So, welcome to the podcast, Omkar.
Thank you very much, Rashna. It's great to be on the podcast. I have been following your podcast since past 1 year, I would say. And finally, it is great to transition from a listener to a guest. Thank you very much again.
Oh, you're very kind. Thanks. And so Omkar, you had a very interesting career path, right? So you started with a bachelor degree in GIS, remote sensing, and then you got into technical writing, and alongside did another journalism course. So what I'm very curious is what made you, first of all, aware of this path in the first place? Because back in 2015, 16-ish, space or even GIS wasn't really as popular in India as it is now, let alone science writing or technical writing around this subject. So, what really made you go down this path?
Yes, thank you very much for this question because I think I actually never got an opportunity to actually tell people in a much more extensive manner because a lot of people actually ask me this in the industry, and in the conferences you cannot really extend a conversation beyond certain limit due to the time limitation. And also, yeah, I would like to actually take a step back and tell you about this thing. Like, the ambition towards space was actually not even a motive in my life. The whole point was to actually enter the Indian Armed Forces. And since my childhood, because I come from a small town called as Alibag, and the one of the head of Operation Blue Star, of course, it was not such a successful operation though. The head of the Operation Blue Star, General Arun Kumar Vaidya, so he was from Alibag. And growing up, looking at all the aspects of the defense, the armed forces, all of it, like Army, Navy, Air Force, Indian Armed Forces, so that actually fascinated me, like, okay, I want to be something like this since my childhood actually. Yeah, then came the point I graduated. I did my 10th standard. Everything was going smoothly. I even entered the military school where we were extensively prepared for National Defense Academy for their entrance exam. Then the SSB interview, which goes on for 5 days. We did all the preparations, everything happened, but unfortunately, during the medical, the last day, uh, I got to know that, because of my flat foot, of course, I cannot enter the Indian Armed Forces. My target was, of course, Army. But yeah, I was, of course, not the only one. There were a lot of people that I have seen, even my seniors. So there's one catch, about SSB. Like, that's what the people inside the armed forces say, and even the people outside who are rejected previously, I say that, a person who clears the SSB but fails to clear the medical, even if he doesn't do anything great in the armed forces, he does something, something that is much more appreciable than the traditional world, in the outside world. So I guess I didn't actually took those words so seriously, because after getting rejection from the SSB, I was kind of depressed, I would say, because that was the only thing that I actually wanted ever in my life. And when this rejection came in, I was in my second year of bachelor's, and that was my last attempt at the age of 19 for the National Defense Academy. And of course, I didn't want to go for the civil services, and it was not even actually option for me. But then, we always say that whenever you're down, or so one door closes, the another door opens, and I think that's what happened with me. So during my bachelor's, actually, I had taken up the subjects chemistry, biology, zoology, and geology. That was my combination of four subjects. And the reason I took this kind of subjects where there is not much technicality required is because I had a plan that if I failed NDA, I would possibly, apply for, the short service commission, that is after the bachelor's in Indian Armed Forces again. But yeah, unfortunately, the dreams were all shattered because of the medical rejections. And then came a point where one of our professors from the Ferguson College Geology Department, so his father was he himself was actually a son of ex-armed forces personnel. And so he told me, like, chap, look at me, that I'm not going to tell you something like choose this path or choose another path for your career. I know you want to get into defense, but I'll tell you one thing, that you can always connect the dots, and geology is one of the subjects where you can actually make the networks. Like, it's not like the other subject like physics, chemistry, mathematics, the core STEM subjects. These are independent subjects. Geology is not independent. Geology, if you study in that, uh, maybe gemology, mineralogy, you need expertise from physics, mathematics. So the subject itself is multidisciplinary. And that's where I started connecting the dots, that I started exploring the space of geology as a subject. Then I came across, okay, there's a planetary science, there is astrobiology in it. And later on I started digging out more, and I came to a point where I got to know, okay, the space, if you look at the space as a whole, is the military is the prime consumer of the space resources, that is the satellite technology. And yeah, that's when actually the journey started towards the space industry. So my whole motive to get into the space industry was to connect my ambition of defense to this industry. And so yeah, from the second year of my bachelor's, the journey started. And yeah, then I came here to France as well, after working for around 6 to 7 years in India. So yeah, that's pretty much my academic path, I would say.
Wow, that is incredible. Like I've would not have imagined anybody pursuing geology in order to make this space applications around defense, international security kind of connection with this motivation. That's wow, that's super incredible. You're that was pretty visionary, actually. I mean, maybe thanks to your mentor, your guide, or for you to making the mental leap. That was really incredible. So after that, you moved to France, right, for your master's at the ISU at the International Space University, and then your master's was in aerospace policy, economics, and law. So was this an organic next step for your path, or why did you choose this particular degree again?
So again, just to take a step back. So after my bachelor's, actually, I mean, during my bachelor's itself, when I realized this connection of space to defense, I started actually enrolling in small amateur astronomy groups in Pune. And then I came across, of course, Inter University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, where I was working with several projects related to the astronomy. We did one project related to the planetary science as well, about the Jupiter IO, which was presented at TIFR in Mumbai. And later on, like, I just wanted to get a gist of, whether I'm a perfect candidate for research, because, all over till my, till the age of around 20, I was never of this ambition that, I would like to do a research, or I would like to do a PhD or a master's. My whole focus was into, the physical demanding roles. But then I started thinking, okay, as the knowledge base and as the network of the people started expanding after my bachelor's, I tried to experiment myself. So I went to Anna University for masters. Then over there I got an internship with the Ministry of Earth Sciences Institute at National Institute of Ocean Technology. And that was actually a turning point for me, because during that patch of 1 to 2 months I got to know that, okay, I'm not really a best person for research, or it's that field is not meant for me. I can be in this sector, but I really need to do something else, because a research requires a lot of patience. You need to sit, it's a kind of a lonely job, just the way the writer's job is. But I didn't had that level of accuracy, and I realized that, that okay, this is my weakness, and I'm if I keep on doing it, I will never succeed in it. Yeah. So that realization and that turning point was very important. So that was that moment I actually directly dropped out from the master's program. It was in my third semester, because I thought, if I cannot give 100% to something, then it's better to drop out. That's what I thought. Then I came back to Pune. Then I started, exploring the arenas of journalism, business communication, and from there, actually, things kick-started towards, the non-technical side. Like, I started looking at the space and defense issues from the non-technical perspective, from the research analysis, market research perspective as well. And during those years, I realized, okay, journalism I started taking up, but I'll tell you the kickstart of the journalism and how it is important later on in the conversation. After having around like an experience of around 6 to 7 years, then I thought, okay, now it is time to gain a little more deeper experience. But because when you're working as a journalist or a business communication person or a business reporter in space and defense, you gain a surface level knowledge, but you cannot really go into the depth of the things. Like, for example, like the work that I do right now here in France, like I actually go on a system level and looking at the full system components and all these things in consulting and all. But that was not the case when I was a journalist, and that's when I thought it's better to now take a step out of India and enroll at the International Space University. So that's how I came to France. I took the decision in 2016, and 2017 I finally got the admission. Though I would say academically it was not a, I would say, very strong journey, but with respect to the network, I would say ISU has helped a lot in that perspective, because every other person in the space industry, especially in the Europe, are from ISU. So it helped me for networking a lot, actually. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely imagine. ISU is where most of the space folks, the coolest, I guess, one of the coolest space folks are there, and there's absolutely no limit to one's imagination there. You can carve out anything you want. I was also wondering because your path has been quite unconventional, right? It's not like you dropping out of research, for example, is a big deal, especially in the Indian scene. Have you faced any, I don't know, discouragement from people around you or your family? Or because I still remember, when I quit my slow job, I was 27 when I quit, and then I had this intense backlash from my colleagues, from my mentors, from my back in ISRO, from my family. So it's every time you kind of pivot and then you realize this is not for me and do something a bit offbeat, you get this kind of discouragement. Have you faced any of that, or were you very lucky in being encouraged in all your decisions?
Yeah, I would actually like to say that, I mean, as a woman, I firstly respect you, for going through this effectively and rising up again. So now I'd like to tell you my side of the story. So yes, definitely, I actually went through that quite a lot. I mean, there was a discouragement not only at the professional level, but even at the personal level as well, because it's not the way the society operates, especially in the traditional Indian families and the ecosystem. But I guess as we proceed, I mean, if we have to go through, like, I would say, if you really want to do something, you have to go through that pain, and I think you also realize that, uh, if there is no other option, you have to go through it. And once you get through it, I think there's a bigger horizon awaits for you to take you to some bigger heights as well. So the one of the things I observed in that actually segment, and I think, is the mindset of the people, the way people think. Even, and I was like horrified to see that people from astrophysics, people from the space industry as well, were even looking at me at that time in a very traditional or a conventional way, I would say. uh, but yeah, at the end of the day, we have to accept this fact that space applications, or space industry in general itself, is a multidisciplinary domain. It's not, as I said, like just like geology. You take earth observation, you're going to need software background, or you're going to need a lot of mathematical background with you. You take satellite communication, you're going to need a mechanical and electronic engineering background with you. So you take anything in the space industry, you're going to need something or the other expertise. And that's what people were not understanding when I actually dropped out. Like, because I was trying to gain the expertise from other domains to find out what I'm good at, because I got to know what I'm not good at. so I was trying to find what I am good at, and I think every person should do this, because of course it's a personal perspective of each of every individual, I would say. But it generally, if you find out what you're not good at, it you automatically actually incline towards, or rush towards, finding out what you're good at. And I think that will I think I would say that kept that made me survive actually those storms, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, having that clarity absolutely helps, right? Because even when I think back, so this next transition to the next step, or this kind of pivoting, was very obvious to me, but it wasn't obvious to others. It was actually the other way around for the others. It was quite counterintuitive to the others. So, but it's easier. I guess it becomes easier the more confident and sure you are of your path. Then it doesn't really matter what others think. But absolutely, I get the Indian pressure,
Yes.
and yeah, it can be quite a tricky situation. But I guess at the end of the day, we are also, you and me, or people like us who make these kind of offbeat pivots. We are also a bit privileged, is what I feel, because we don't really have any great financial obligations or any other obligations that would force us into these conventional, traditional career paths. So I guess I would also count us quite lucky in having the freedom to choose these offbeat paths.
Definitely. I think one more thing like I would like to add uh, is that the narrative setting. I mean, I learned this very late, I would say, because I think if I would have mastered it very well back in the early days, it would have been better. But I think that's where the educational gap is. Even in the space industry, I see we don't see a lot of people talking from a social sciences perspective in the space industry. For an example I would like to give is the domain of space exploration. I mean, if we look at the kind of initiatives and the things that are coming up at the moment, everything is fine. I highly respect the engineers in this industry, but you have to look at the social aspect as well of it. One of the things is the narrative setting. And I think right now in the situation that we are, it's the war between Russia Ukraine is going on, and we know that a certain group or a particular nation's perspectives been hammered on certain group or the industries right at the moment. So space industry at the moment doesn't have any option but to eliminate or exclude all the kind of the narratives which don't align with the narratives of the West at the moment. But I think this situation can be improved. What I'm trying to say is like the space industry or the commercial enterprises should try to at least take the control of their own narrative where they are standing. And this narrative building doesn't come like magically. You cannot build the narrative by being an excellent engineer. You need a social sciences background for it. And uh, coming back to my point of journalism, so this is the reason I actually took up journalism, because I realized one thing, like whether you might be a CEO of a company, or you might be a greatest scientist in the world, there are only four skills that can sharpen up your career and your or help you achieve whatever you want. That is reading, writing, and listening, and speaking. So so if you really want to do anything in your life, or if you want to achieve anything in your life, I would say this four skill set are very important. Rest everything comes later on. And I think this four skill set help you set your narrative. Like setting up your own narrative is like, uh, for example I would like to give, like we say, why Elon Musk is so successful. Okay, people say generally that okay, he has a political contacts, he's known very well, he has a lot of network. But the thing is, it's not only enough to have the network or the contacts in the industry. You need to set your narrative. You need to tell the people effectively what you actually want out of it. And I think space exploration as a domain is failing in that. They are unable to convince the people in what they want and what things are going to come out of the initiatives. They're failing to set the narratives. And I think, uh, I believe, if you see, there are several kind of verticals For example, we had never seen like the satellite communication industry in the LEO NGSO segment getting so much kind of I would say upliftment, because before SpaceX and everyone, there was a company called as Leosat. But yeah, unfortunately, with them also, that's what happened. They failed to set the narrative in front of the investors. It's not about how much of a technically good plan you have, but it's more about how much well narrative setting you can do. And I think this is where the social sciences aspect come into the play, because narrative setting is something very much high related to the social sciences knowledge base, as opposed to the engineering and all. So yeah, that's the point I wanted to include. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. One definitely needs a very multidisciplinary perspective on this global space scene, right, to really shape the sector. Because tech, at the end of the day, only forms a very small part. Geopolitics and economics are the biggest drivers. In fact, and you're absolutely right. When one is an engineer or a scientist, or contributing to any space mission or spending any space activity in a technical capacity or a scientific capacity, we have a very limited vision of how this whole space dynamics work. And I've only realized this after I opted to do the space law course, and I'm like, whoa, tech is such a tiny part. So many things, even historically, even currently, even in the future, there's so many other things driving it. And coming to the, since you mentioned setting the narrative, right? Do you think space sci-fi in the form of books, TV series, could play a role in reaching the masses?
Definitely. I mean, there is no other greater form in this world to reach the mass audience than the films. Because to watch a film, you don't need a degree. You can anyone can watch the film. And yeah, I would like to just add on this, because from all the things that we discussed just now, and there are a lot of things that I have personally experienced as well. So I'm actually writing a book with a female led character. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of 2023. Of course, it's not fully related to the space industry, but the story revolves around the Asian perspective, from the India especially, I would say, but covers the Asian perspective of espionage, counterterrorism, the space industry, and all. But yeah, I would be, of course, happy to tell about it once the publishing gets accepted and all these things. But the reason actually it came to my mind is because when I was doing journalism, I I it's not that I was doing 100 like all the 24 hours a day. It was just space or defense related assignments, as I was working with a general firm. So we were actually also reporting for a lot of film festivals, and that's where I got to know the thing that like entertainment is such a kind of a space where you can actually amplify what you're trying to say. Like, for example, people really didn't know about black holes a lot. I mean, appreciable amount of people knew in the industry and the other industries as well, other than space. But just look at the graph since Interstellar has released. So after the release of Interstellar, the conversation of the astrophysics I observed in India are happening even at the level where you cannot even imagine, in even in the small villages. Because generally when I used to visit some of the villages near my town and all, the conversation that we used to have is about okay, when did you came, and we don't have water and all these things. But but now the conversations are about okay, you're working in space, can you tell us about black holes? So that's the kind of conversation, a change that has happened since the release of Interstellar. And I think more can be done from this perspective. Of course, the thing that I'm writing is actually from a female perspective, because I'm focusing on a female led character, because I believe, especially in the Indian setting, historically, the Indian females that they have contributed in terms of carrying out a high level spy activities as well for the Britishers back in the World War II. Those are so underrated. It's unfortunate that neither the Indian industry or neither the Hollywood as well, they try to, or they haven't even tried to focus on it. Few of the films have came out which actually had focus on the female characters. But yeah, I'm trying to actually widen that lens to put more spotlight on the Indian women, especially, and their contribution. So, of course, it's a fictional story, but yeah, I'd be happy to discuss it after once the book is accepted by the publishers and all. Yeah.
Wow. Omkar, you have totally made my weekend about this book. I can't wait to read the sci-fi book of yours. First of all, of course, the female perspective is incredible. An Indian perspective, all the more exciting. More than all these things, I think you're given your experience, right? So you are a geologist. You've dabbled with economics, the space law. You've done aerospace policy and defense security. So given all these this kind of a multidisciplinary perspective and your experiences, I can't wait to read your book. So let's have another podcast episode once everything gets going with your book, and then yeah, we can do a dedicated episode on it.
Yes.
And also, yes, I completely agree that entertainment. You mentioned Interstellar, right? We all, I think, the masses, the so-called masses, who are not really scientists or technical people who've never really read about black holes or the or the multiple dimensions, we all kind of rose to the occasion, and then we ended up watching it twice and thrice and googled about it and then educated ourselves and got into interesting conversations. So I guess you're absolutely right. Entertainment is probably the best way, the most effective way to shape the perspectives of the masses, because now we get our news, we shape our political views from late night comedy shows, from stand-up comedians. So entertainment is a, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. It's a wonderful tool.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So, coming back to the present, in your case, now you've started pursuing a Master of Arts, an MA degree in International Relations, Security, and Strategy. Is this also like a natural progression for you? What knowledge do you envisage gaining from pursuing this?
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, like I work right now full time, and there was, I mean, I was trying to see if I can pursue some master's course, possibly as a full time. But of course, I tried to iterate these things that I cannot, of course, leave my uh, current industry work, because of course I leave, then things get halted in terms of networking and everything. And then I came across this course on Coursera from Jindal Global University. So, by the way, actually, before coming to France, I had applied, to several universities, and Jindal Global University was also one of them. So I had received like offered letter from Jindal Global University and ISU together at the same time, but I chose ISU. And again, we say that you always go back to the thing. So I think that's what has happened with me. Yeah. So, and I think this course, the reason I started with this course is because during my last 5 years of patch here in Europe, working in the space industry, and especially specializing in military satellite communication, I came across a lot of pointers and small nuggets, related to the geopolitics, international security. For example, I'll try to give you is okay. I'm a military satellite company, and I want to sell a capacity. It's not as easy as a commercial company can operate, where you just go to the VC, get the money, start distributing services. Here you actually need to know the levels of diplomacy, the kind of networking you would like to do with the government relations or the government contacts. And while actually working with several clients from the both the government and the private sector, I really realized that I'm having a lot of gap in the knowledge of the international security relations strategy. And that's when I realized that it is necessary to actually do a specialized course. Of course, I didn't realize it very quickly. After a patch of 5 years, as I said, having small experiences day by day, I realized that I need to take something in this area or the domain. So the primary motive is to actually cement my position that I'm existingly working in the military satellite communication, add a kind of a more strategic layer of knowledge onto it, and that's the reason I started pursuing it. And one of the prime reason I would say, when I decided to actually take this course, is because the faculties who are teaching us this course online are the former, some of them are the former officers or the former diplomats who are teaching us. So I would always actually suggest to the people that, if they are trying to, at this day and age of the career, if they are trying to take up any kind of courses, especially in this kind of domain, related to the political science, social sciences, try to see or look at the faculties who have been, on field in that particular area. So the person or the professors who are actually teaching us the subjects of diplomacy and international relations has himself been a diplomat through his career of around like 30 years. And yeah, and I think there lies a difference. For example, I can tell about this thing. Back when in India, when I was doing, I dropped out from the masters. One of the reasons that, when I was studying, was that the faculties were, not an active researchers. I would like, the thing is, you need a faculty who works on field on that issue. For example, it will always make a difference to learn something from a person who has actually worked on field, as opposed to a person who has never worked on field and is just coming to the class and teaching you. And I think that is one of the prime reasons, I would say, the most successful kind of institutes you can always find, or the most successful individuals you can always find in the career path, are doctors. Because the doctor education always happens inside a hospital, where where an individual actually gets a hands-on experience on everything that they are seeing while they're having the lectures in the evening, or in the morning they're interacting with the doctors. But we don't see this thing happening with lot of engineering, even the arts and the other science colleges too. And I think that things needs to be there, of course, as a collective, for the collective good I'm talking about. But yeah, the whole reason that I one of the prime reasons that I took up this course is because the faculties are, who have actually taught, or have been working on field, and then now they are, teaching us. So whenever they tell us or start teaching us about some incidents, they actually tell us the real life experience on it. So that is very helpful. It kind of inspires you, motivates you to, learn more.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. Because in that case, it's no longer just an academic course, right? It's they are concentrating all their experience that they've gained throughout their career, throughout their long careers, and giving you the extract of it. So that's I can only imagine it being an incredible experience. Absolutely true. So, Omkar, you've been doing consulting, and you've also been an analyst for the last many years. How do you land these consulting opportunities? And are these opportunities or the projects you have done mostly international assignments? Are they mostly focused around Europe, or how does this whole thing work?
So yeah, I think right after my masters, I was fortunate enough to actually get into a consulting firm, because that's what I wanted to do. My whole point of coming to France was not to actually work in like space, for a space agency, or kind of a very full scale space companies manufacturing components. My whole transition that I wanted to do is from being a kind of a generalized, I would say, business journalism expert, to a market research or a consultant, I would say. And during my masters itself, I kept a track of this thing, that I took my one individual project related to something that aligns well with the consulting, like market report and all this stuff. And yeah, it was pretty easy to actually get in, because I was very much active on LinkedIn, and I received the internship offer from the LinkedIn itself, from the Battle Gateway
Oh, wow.
Consulting. Yeah, so they actually messaged me on LinkedIn, and that's how things kick-started. And I'm very fortunate to them, that I think uh, one of the key reasons that I chose to be with them, even though they were very small at that time, is because they were working on several other markets other than the Middle Eastern, Asian, or the European satellite markets, or the American. So we are working on Latin American markets, Russian, Chinese market as well. And I think when you work on the kind of markets which don't have information publicly available as such, you automatically start gaining kind of an edge in your expertise. And I think that's what happened with me, because after a year I was unable to judge myself in a way that, okay, I have got so much knowledge, because I was speaking with some people in conference, and I was unable to actually believe myself that, but it happened in the process. Even I didn't realize it, because that's the thing. For example, if you are not finding something on Google, if you try to search about even you try if you try to search about radio spectrum related things about France, because they use French language, it is tough. But if you keep on searching, you keep on researching on those things on Google, on other open web sources, you will see, in that streak of research, you would have learned so many things, that of course your mind couldn't actually go back and see how much you have captured it. But when you start speaking with the industry people, you get to know that, how much you have learned in that process. So that's what happened when I was working on the Chinese, Latin American, and the Russian satellite markets back then. Whereas my all my friends were actually working on the European and North American satellite markets, Middle Eastern, Asian markets. And yeah, I was work in during the internship. I was feeling sad. I was like, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I'm working on Russian and Chinese market. Okay, who's going to look at me now? So, but yeah, I think that gave me edge over everything later on in the career path. And I think that's what actually launched me as an independent consultant as well in the industry. That experience helped me to kind of cast a wide net over everything. And I believe a lot of, I would say, the expertise that are there in market research and consulting is journalism. Journalism with much more depth in research, writing, and analysis, I would say. As I said, previously, right now the work that I do as a consultant, or even if there are consultants in other sectors as well. But generally, if you see from this perspective, that the non-tech if you are in non-technical field, you need prime skills that you'll be using are two, that is writing and communication. So if you're in sales, you need a good communication background. And if you're into writing, like me, into consulting, or uh, doing journalism, you need a good writing skill set. So again, going back to the point, the degrees and all the knowledge, these are for the consumption purposes, for the for an individual. But the four skill set that will always launch your career, or boost your career, are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. I mean, these are the basic. And I think most of the people these days I see, their career track are not going the way they want, or they're failing somewhere, is because they are not having core skill set in these four verticals, like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We all have done this in school, but believe me, that I have seen people who are at a possibly director position, but still cannot write the way they should actually. And I think this four skill set, you need to focus on it, anyhow, in whichever position you are, I would say.
Do you think Chat GPT or GPT-4 would help in this regard?
At somewhat level it can help, of course. In terms of writing, of course it can help to somewhat level. But still you need to do some human efforts, because I have tried chat gpt as well few times now, since past 2 3 months. But yeah, at the end of the day, you need to put a command, right? For that. And when the command gives you a result, you still need to kind of polish it. You cannot actually put it up as it is. It's kind of, of course, making the writer's job little bit easier, I would say, but not easier to the extent that the buzz has been created in the market.
I totally agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a tool, and the output from that tool is only as good as the person who's actually using the tool.
Yes.
You've, of course, worked on a lot of international assignments, on a lot of these non European or the other unexplored markets. But coming back to the French space scene, since you're located there, what level of French language proficiency is needed to really break into into the French space scene?
For the French, like if you'd like to actually work in the French space ecosystem, I mean, as compared to what it was back in 2017, now things are pretty much, I would say, open. Like they accept the people who speak English, but of course, you need to at least master until A2 to B1 level at at the most. At least if it doesn't matter even if you cannot, possibly write well, or kind of other things, but at least you should be able to speak few things. At least you should be able to understand things which can be communicated well with your colleagues, with your team, with your partners. And I believe there are a lot of actually French companies like even Euroconsult and all, and they hire the non French speakers here in Paris as well. So that's, I mean, they have become much more, I would say, pretty much open as compared to what it was the in back in 2017 and 18. But yeah, I would highly still recommend people that if you want to work in the space industry, you should at least master some level of French, if not an expert level. At least A1 to A2 level you can do. It's quite easy. I mean, you can do it in within a span of 6 months actually. So it's I would say very much necessary as you if you would like to progress your career in the French space industry.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. I mean, even if for someone to actually move to France and live there, it totally makes sense to be able to carry out conversations with the French people around. And also, French is not any obsolete language, right? It's one of the most romantic languages in the world. So
Yes.
I'm sure there's enough
Yes, yes,
enough
yeah.
motivation to learn. So, Omkar, it's been such a fun conversation. You've shared such intricate detail your journey, and I'm sure this would inspire a lot of people to seriously consider such offbeat and non-traditional career paths. So, thank you so much for that. And if space enthusiasts or young professionals they want to reach you and connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
I'll provide my contact details to you. I can actually put up in the episode description. Also, I'm highly active on LinkedIn, and of course, I have my own website, but I'm highly active on LinkedIn, so you can drop me a message on LinkedIn anytime. Send a request as well. Yeah.
That's great. Perfect. Thanks again, Omkar. Hope you have a nice rest of the Sunday.
Yes, thank you very much, Rashna. It has been a great conversation, and I wish you all the best for your future episodes too. I am one of your subscribers, so yeah, keep making the episodes great.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much.